Goldie Hawn wasn't just America's sweetheart. She was the golden-haired spark who lit up Hollywood comedies and dramas for decades. To millions, she embodied joy, charm, and effortless optimism. But behind that signature laugh and wide-eyed smile, the industry whispered for years about rivalries, fallouts, and friendships that turned sour. Now at 68, Goldie is reportedly breaking her silence, finally naming the five people who left the deepest scars. Some names you'll expect. Others, they'll take you completely by surprise. Stay tuned, because by the end, the real map of Goldie Hawn's rise, struggles, and grudges will be laid bare. Let's dive in. Before the world knew her as Hollywood's it girl of the late 1960s and 70s, Goldie Jean Hawn was just a young dancer from Washington, D.C., who dreamed of bigger stages. Born in 1945, she trained in ballet and jazz from childhood, performing in productions long before television cameras ever found her. She was magnetic, and when she headed west, it wasn't long before her infectious giggle and a stunning presence made her a household name. Her breakout came on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, the NBC sketch comedy show that turned her into a national star almost overnight. Who could forget the quirky, bikini-clad dancer delivering punchlines in between psychedelic cuts? Audiences adored her. Suddenly, Goldie wasn't just another hopeful actress, she was a sensation. By the early 70s, she had earned an Academy Award for Cactus Flower and cemented her reputation as a performer who could balance lighthearted comedy with genuine depth. But Goldie's career wasn't built on just luck. She maneuvered Hollywood with sharp instincts, proving she could carry films on her own terms. Private Benjamin in 1980 wasn't just a box office smash, it was a cultural milestone. Goldie not only starred in the feminist-leaning comedy, she produced it, a rare move for actresses of her era. Suddenly, she wasn't just a starlet, she was a powerhouse. She had creative control, financial stakes, and influence that rattled some of her peers and even executives. Her charm, however, didn't always shield her from Hollywood's darker undercurrents. The industry she conquered was competitive, sometimes cutthroat, and filled with strong personalities, not all of whom admired Goldie's success. Through the decades, she appeared in classics like Overboard, Bird on a Wire, and Death Becomes Her. Each role added layers to her public persona, bubbly yet smart, comedic yet capable of real drama. And through it all, she crafted one of Hollywood's longest-lasting relationships with Kurt Russell, a love story that fans still celebrate. Yet behind the laughs and glamour, Hollywood insiders and fans alike have long speculated about Goldie's off-screen tensions. In an industry driven by egos, studio politics, and shifting alliances, even the most beloved star isn't immune to rivalry. Reports over the years pointed to creative clashes with directors, competitiveness with fellow actors, and the ever-present pressure from networks and producers who wanted to mold her image their way. And so, when whispers began surfacing that Goldie had privately named the five people she hated working with the most, fans leaned in. For someone who had always projected warmth and optimism, such a list felt like peeking behind the velvet curtain of Hollywood's golden age. It's difficult to separate rumor from reality, of course, but one thing is clear. Goldie Hawn's journey has been shaped not only by her triumphs, but also by the battles she fought along the way. Now, for the first time, we step into that other side of her story. The countdown begins. For decades, Goldie Hawn's brand has been all about lightness. That sparkling laugh, the carefree energy, the sense that she could find sunshine in even the darkest corner. But behind the scenes, Hollywood insiders whisper a different story. Success on that scale never comes without tension. And for Goldie, the price of fame sometimes meant colliding head-on with people whose values, egos, or decisions clashed with her own. According to industry chatter, there were at least five figures who left lasting marks on her career. Moments of betrayal, disrespect, or sheer frustration. Not all of them were fellow actors. Some were gatekeepers. Some were allies who turned into rivals. Others, people close enough to sting in ways audiences never saw coming. And while Goldie herself has rarely spoken directly about hate, fans and journalists have pieced together the conflicts that shaped her journey. So, who are they? Let's dive into the countdown. Chevy Chase. The first name on Goldie's list, Chevy Chase. The tagline? Comedy gold met late-night sarcasm, and sparks flew. Goldie and Chevy Chase teamed up in 1980 for the caper comedy Seems Like Old Times. On paper, the pairing was irresistible. Two comedy powerhouses of the era sharing the screen. At first, the collaboration seemed like a dream. Chevy's sharp, improvisational wit balanced Goldie's bubbly charm, and fans expected nothing less than magic. But insiders suggest the chemistry on set didn't match the chemistry on screen. Chevy, already known for his unpredictable temperament, reportedly clashed with Goldie over timing and delivery. What began as playful banter allegedly turned tense, with rehearsals sometimes stretching into battles of comedic control. On screen, audiences saw the effortless charm, a rom-com built on snappy dialogue and playful tension. Off-screen, however, reports painted a different picture. Crew members later hinted that Chevy's biting humor didn't always land well with Goldie, who valued professionalism and balance on set. While Chevy's approach leaned toward improvisation and unpredictability, Goldie preferred structure. Sources have suggested she found his behavior frustrating, even dismissive at times. The production itself wrapped without scandal, but the mood lingered. Interviews after the release revealed subtle hints. Chevy, in typical fashion, made tongue-in-cheek remarks about co-stars, while Goldie praised the project more than the partnership. Fans picked up on the distance, noting that the two never reunited for another film, unusual given Hollywood's tendency to milk successful pairings. Critics also observed that while the movie was moderately successful, it lacked the electric spark one might expect from such a high-profile duo. Online discussions years later pointed back to this project as an example of comedy giants who didn't quite click behind the curtain. For Goldie, the experience reportedly reaffirmed her desire to take more control of her projects. Soon after, she leaned harder into producing, ensuring she had greater influence over casting and creative direction. Private Benjamin, which came the same year, showcased not only her star power, but also her ability to shape a story around her own strengths, something she may have felt she couldn't rely on with co-stars who disrupted the balance. The Chase experience became a cautionary tale. Charm on camera doesn't always mean harmony off it. And if you thought Chevy Chase was a surprising entry, just wait. Number 4 is someone far closer to home. You won't believe who's next. Bette Midler. The next name on Goldie's list hits closer to home. Bette Midler. The tagline? Two divas, one spotlight, and the fallout that came from sharing it. When Goldie Hawn and Bette Midler teamed up for the First Wives Club in 1996, it seemed like a match made in Hollywood heaven. Add Diane Keaton to the mix, and the film promised to be a powerhouse of female-driven comedy, tackling divorce, revenge, and friendship with a sharp, satirical edge. The trio was electric on screen. They played off each other's quirks, strengths, and comedic rhythms in ways that audiences adored. The movie became a box office triumph, earning nearly $200 million worldwide. But behind the scenes, things weren't nearly as harmonious. According to production insiders and later gossip columns, there was tension about who would be the film's breakout star. Goldie and Bette both carried reputations as scene stealers, each with a distinct comedic style. Goldie leaned into her wide-eyed, bubbly energy, the kind of ditzy charm that hid a razor-sharp wit. Bette, on the other hand, was all about brash humor, powerhouse vocals, and bold delivery. Their energies didn't always blend seamlessly. Reports suggest that rehearsals sometimes turned competitive. Bette, known for her strong personality and commanding presence, allegedly dominated scenes, while Goldie, more subtle but equally ambitious, pushed back in her own ways. Crew members whispered about multiple takes being required, not because of flubbed lines, but because of behind-the-scenes tug-of-wars over timing, punchlines, and who got the last laugh in a scene. While Diane Keaton reportedly played the mediator, the tension between Goldie and Bette bubbled just below the surface. On screen, audiences saw three women delivering iconic performances. Their chemistry, the laughs, the bonding, the empowerment felt authentic. Off-screen, though, the story's more complicated. In interviews after the film's release, Goldie praised the experience but often focused on the script and the crew rather than gushing about her co-stars. Bet, meanwhile, made her typical tongue-in-cheek comments, joking about diva behavior and egos without naming names. Fans noticed. Industry reports suggested that the competition wasn't malicious, but stemmed from two women used to being the center of attention, suddenly forced to share the spotlight. Goldie was an Academy Award winner, a producer, and a longtime A-list actress. Bet was a multi-talented performer who had conquered music, stage, and film. Both were used to commanding a room, and neither was eager to fade into the background. The alleged friction became more apparent when discussions of a sequel to The First Wives Club surfaced. While fans clamored for a follow-up, rumors swirled that disputes among the leads over contracts, billing, and creative control stalled the project. Some reports pointed directly to the Hawn-Midler dynamic, suggesting they couldn't agree on terms that felt fair to both. While the studio publicly downplayed the issue, the sequel never materialized. The receipts, as fans like to call them, are scattered across interviews, talk show appearances, and later retrospectives. In one memorable promotional interview, Bet joked about strong personalities on set and quipped that some actresses don't like sharing mirrors. Audiences laughed, but the pointed humor sparked speculation. Goldie, by contrast, kept her comments diplomatic, but noticeably avoided discussing personal camaraderie. Years later, when Bet was asked about The First Wives Club during a reunion-themed talk show appearance, she praised the film's impact but hesitated when asked if she'd work with the same team again. The pause said more than words. Fans quickly connected the dots. The powerhouse trio may have looked unshakable on screen, but off-screen, things were more fragile. Online forums and fan discussions often revisit this rivalry. Some argue that the tension between Goldie and Bet actually enhanced their performances, pushing each to bring her best energy to the role. Others lament that ego battles robbed audiences of a much-desired sequel. Either way, the impression stuck. The harmony of The First Wives Club was more cinematic illusion than Hollywood reality. For Goldie, the clash reportedly reaffirmed something she'd learned over decades in the industry: the importance of control. Unlike her earlier days when she was more often cast into roles shaped by others, Goldie had reached a point where she wanted her projects to reflect her vision. Competing with another strong personality like Bette Midler highlighted the risk of losing that control. After The First Wives Club, Goldie became more selective about ensemble films, leaning instead toward projects that emphasized her individuality or her partnership with Kurt Russell. The missed opportunity of a sequel also carried weight. For many, The First Wives Club was more than a comedy. It was a cultural statement, a rare moment where Hollywood put women in their 40s and 50s front and center. The fact that behind-the-scenes disagreements may have kept a sequel from happening only fueled the frustration among fans. For Goldie, it meant watching a potential franchise slip away, not because of box office numbers, but because of clashing egos. And yet, despite the tension, the film remains one of Goldie's defining late-career successes. Every rewatch reminds fans of what could have been and what may have been lost in the rivalry. If the clash with Bette Midler was about two stars battling for the same spotlight, the next entry is about something more personal: loyalty. Number 3 isn't just another co-star, it's someone Goldie once considered part of her inner circle. Who could that be? Keep watching. Ali MacGraw. The third name on Goldie's list hits a deeper nerve than professional rivalry: Ali MacGraw. The tagline? Friendship, fame, and a fracture that stung more than any Hollywood headline. In the 1970s, Goldie Hawn and Ali MacGraw were two of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. Goldie had won an Oscar for Cactus Flower and was transitioning into leading lady territory, while Ali became a global phenomenon almost overnight with Love Story 1970. Their careers mirrored each other in certain ways. They were both blonde, beautiful, and hailed as symbols of a shifting era in American cinema, where women could anchor box office smashes. It was only natural that the two crossed paths socially. Hollywood's elite circle in the early 70s was relatively small, with star-studded parties, award shows, and charity galas providing the backdrop for friendships to spark. Goldie and Ali were photographed together more than once, often smiling arm in arm, which fueled a perception of camaraderie. According to some accounts, they genuinely enjoyed each other's company in the beginning, bonding over the whirlwind of sudden fame and the pressures that came with it. But things shifted. Reports at the time, echoed later in fan magazines, suggested that professional jealousy crept in. Goldie was often cast in comedies with a lighter touch, while Ali leaned into dramas that carried Oscar buzz. When Goldie's projects began outpacing Ali's in both critical acclaim and box office longevity, whispers of strain emerged. Some insiders claimed Ali resented the way Goldie seemed to sustain her stardom longer, while Ali's career dipped after high-profile personal scandals. Others insisted it was Goldie who pulled back, wary of being compared too often to Ali or dragged into the gossip storms surrounding her. Unlike with Chevy Chase or Bette Midler, Goldie and Ali never co-starred in a major film. Their relationship was lived mostly off-screen, in the private but very publicized Hollywood social circuit. That's what makes this rift so compelling. On screen, they were never rivals. Audiences never saw them together in scripted roles. But off-screen, the comparisons were constant. Entertainment magazines of the 70s loved to pit women against each other, and Goldie and Ali were no exception. The public narrative painted them as competing for the same scripts, the same directors, and the same headlines. Some of it may have been manufactured by the press, but it affected reality. Allegedly, Goldie began distancing herself to avoid being pulled into the orbit of Ali's high-profile relationship with Steve McQueen, which brought its own wave of tabloid scrutiny. Insiders suggested Goldie valued stability and professionalism, while Ali's personal life, marked by whirlwind romances and public scandals, risked overshadowing any collaboration between them. The receipts here aren't movie scenes but photographs, magazine covers, and scattered interviews. In one candid moment from the mid-70s, Ali was asked about her contemporaries and reportedly downplayed Goldie's acting skills, suggesting she was more of a TV personality than a serious film star. While some chalked it up to casual shade, others viewed it as the beginning of the end of their friendship. Goldie, by contrast, rarely addressed Ali directly, choosing instead to keep her answers diplomatic. Fans noticed the silence, which in Hollywood sometimes says more than words. When Ali's career waned in the late 70s and early 80s, Goldie's continued to flourish. While Ali made headlines for personal struggles and a very public divorce, Goldie headlined hits like Foul Play and Private Benjamin. Fans speculated that Goldie's choice to stay clear of Ali was intentional, a way to preserve her own carefully crafted image as Hollywood's bubbly but resilient darling. In hindsight, many believe the distance between them was strategic, even if it left lingering bitterness. For Goldie, the fracture with Ali MacGraw was more than just a broken friendship. It reinforced a lesson she had learned repeatedly in Hollywood. Proximity to scandal can be just as damaging as scandal itself. By keeping her distance, she protected her career, which thrived even as Ali's star dimmed. But there was also an emotional cost. For someone who projected warmth and connection, losing a friend, even one caught in the undertow of gossip, was painful. It was a reminder that in Hollywood, friendships were fragile, especially when fame, jealousy, and survival were in the mix. For Ali, the rivalry represented something else, the harsh reality that the industry doesn't always treat its it girls equally. Goldie found ways to evolve, moving from ingenue to producer, while Ali struggled to reinvent herself after early success. The contrast between them became a cultural talking point, a case study in who adapts and who fades. In the end, the fallout between Goldie and Ali may never have been explosive, but it was quietly telling. A friendship once photographed with smiles ended with decades of distance, punctuated only by the occasional mention in retrospectives. Fans still debate, was it true dislike or just the unavoidable drift of two women pulled in different directions by fame? If number 3 was about friendship soured by fame, number 2 is about something even more complicated: power. The next entry involves a clash not with a peer, but with someone who tried to control Goldie's very future. Who was it? You'll want to keep watching. Alan Ladd Jr. The next name on Goldie's list isn't a co-star, a friend, or even a fellow performer. It's someone who sat in the high tower of Hollywood decision-making, Alan Ladd Jr. The tagline? The studio boss who believed he owned the star, and the battle that taught Goldie the price of power. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, Goldie Hawn had carved out a rare position in Hollywood. She wasn't just an actress who took assignments. She was a producer, a businesswoman, and an artist with a vision. That set her apart, but it also put her directly in conflict with some of the most powerful executives in the industry. One of those was Alan Ladd Jr., then a rising force in studio leadership, later known as the man who championed Star Wars at Fox. Ladd had a reputation for shaping stars' careers by pairing them with projects the studio wanted to make. For some actors, this was a gift. It meant steady work, prestige films, and built-in marketing machines. But for Goldie, it was a problem. She didn't want to be told which scripts to accept. She had already seen what happened to actresses who played the studio game too long. Their careers were short-lived. The rift reportedly began when Ladd Jr.'s team pushed Goldie toward a series of roles that didn't fit her vision. Insiders say she resisted, preferring to develop her own material. The clash came to a head around Private Benjamin. Ladd and other studio executives were skeptical about the project, calling it too risky and too female-driven to succeed. Goldie, however, fought tooth and nail to make it happen. When the film turned into a massive hit, earning her an Academy Award nomination and proving she could produce as well as act, the relationship between star and the studio boss shifted permanently. On screen, audiences saw the result of Goldie's determination. Private Benjamin became one of the defining comedies of the 1980s, a story of a pampered woman transforming through the military that resonated with both men and women. Off-screen, though, the victory came at a cost. Goldie's determination to push back against studio pressures marked her as difficult in certain executive circles. Hollywood in the 1980s was still very much a boys' club, and female stars who tried to control their projects were often branded as troublemakers. According to industry reports, Ladd Jr. was among those who allegedly saw Goldie as a challenge to the established order. He respected her success but didn't appreciate being proven wrong so publicly. The dynamic became a tug-of-war. Goldie wanted independence, Ladd wanted oversight. The receipts here are in the historical record of Private Benjamin's production. Numerous interviews from the time confirmed that the project faced resistance from studio brass. Goldie herself has spoken in broad terms about the challenges, admitting that executives doubted the film's viability. While she never named Ladd directly in public interviews, the industry knew who held the power at Warner Brothers during those years. Fans, too, picked up on the undercurrent. In retrospectives, Private Benjamin is often cited as a turning point, not just for Goldie, but for women in Hollywood overall. It proved that female-led comedies could be both critical and commercial hits, something executives had resisted. The fan read, Goldie didn't just clash with a boss, she helped change an entire system, forcing Hollywood to reckon with its biases. Over the years, online discussions have occasionally revived the story, framing it as an early battle in the fight for female representation in film. While some credit Ladd for greenlighting daring projects, others argue that his hesitation with Goldie reflected the very obstacles women faced. Either way, the legend stuck. Goldie went head-to-head with studio power and walked away with the win. For Goldie, the battle with Alan Ladd Jr. was about more than one film. It was about carving out her place as a woman who wouldn't be controlled by the studio system. The success of Private Benjamin gave her leverage to pick her projects more carefully, to continue producing, and to build a career on her own terms. But it also left scars. Being labeled difficult in Hollywood could sink a career. Goldie managed to survive it because her star power was undeniable. But the experience underscored how fragile power really was. It also shaped her choices moving forward. Goldie became more cautious about the executives she partnered with, preferring collaborations where she felt respected. She leaned into working with trusted allies, including Kurt Russell, who supported her vision. The Ladd experience taught her that in Hollywood, even triumphs come with hidden costs. For Alan Ladd Jr., the conflict was just one of many battles with stars during his tenure. He went on to have a storied career, but the clash with Goldie remains a fascinating footnote in both their legacies, a reminder that the studio system and individual creativity were often at odds. If number 2 was about power struggles with the Hollywood system, number 1 takes us somewhere, even more shocking. Into Goldie's personal life. The name at the very top of the list isn't a co-star or an executive. It's someone whose connection to her runs deeper. Who could it be? Keep watching. Edward Rutledge Hawn. The final name on Goldie Hawn's list isn't a rival actress or a studio executive. It isn't even someone she sparred with on set. It's more intimate than that. Her estranged father, Edward Rutledge Hawn. The tagline? The man who shaped her early life and the complicated legacy of love, loss, and disappointment that never faded. Goldie Hawn grew up in Tacoma Park, Maryland, the daughter of Edward, a band musician, and Laura, who owned a dance school. From the outside, her childhood seemed filled with rhythm, music, and performance. Goldie's love for dance came directly from her mother's influence, but her father's role was trickier. Edward was present in her early years, but reportedly struggled with consistency. When her parents divorced during Goldie's adolescence, the split left a mark. Goldie has occasionally spoken about her father, noting the challenges of their relationship. While she inherited some of his artistic flair, she also felt the sting of abandonment. Insiders suggest the divorce fractured the bond, leaving Goldie craving stability and approval in ways that carried into her adult life. Friends close to her have hinted that her father's absence, especially during her teenage years, was one of the defining sources of hurt in her life. On screen, Goldie cultivated the persona of the endlessly optimistic ingenue, the woman who laughed through every challenge. Off-screen, however, the shadow of her father's absence lingered. In interviews, she has described herself as searching for home and safety, themes that carried through her career choices and her long-term relationship with Kurt Russell. While she rarely spoke harshly about Edward publicly, the underlying pain was visible to those who knew her best. The contrast between the bubbly screen persona and the private wounds tells a larger story. Fans saw a star who radiated warmth, but that warmth was forged through struggle. Goldie poured herself into comedy and optimism, perhaps as a counterweight to the turbulence of her childhood. It's a dynamic many stars of her generation shared, projecting joy while privately carrying unresolved family struggles. Unlike the feuds with Chevy Chase or Bette Midler, the receipts here come from Goldie's own words. In her memoir and in scattered interviews over the decades, she has referenced the pain of her parents' divorce and the distance that grew with her father. Fans who followed her story noticed how guarded she became when discussing her early family life. While she praised her mother's influence often, her father's role was less celebrated, a silence that spoke volumes. Media outlets, particularly in the 1980s and 90s, occasionally revisited the topic, framing Goldie's strained relationship with Edward as a root of her determination to build her own unconventional family with Kurt Russell. Fans debated whether her sunny public image was a shield against those deeper scars. The consensus? Goldie's complicated relationship with her father explained the steel beneath her smile. The rift with her father shaped Goldie in profound ways. It drove her to seek control in her professional life, to protect herself against abandonment in her personal life, and to build a family structure that broke from traditional Hollywood norms. Her decades-long partnership with Kurt Russell, without ever marrying, reflected her determination to define love and family on her own terms. She wanted stability, yes, but not at the cost of repeating old wounds. In many ways, Edward's absence became the ultimate enemy in Goldie's life, not because of malice, but because of what it represented: instability, disappointment, and the fragility of trust. Unlike her feuds with co-stars or battles with executives, this was the one relationship she could never fully rewrite. And for fans who looked at Goldie's ever-present smile, knowing this part of her story added depth. That smile wasn't just joy, it was resilience. Now that we've uncovered all 5 names, the bigger question remains: what do these clashes add up to? What do they say about Goldie's career, her choices, and the legacy she carries into her late 60s? Let's bring it all together. Looking back, the 5 names tell a story that's bigger than individual rivalries. Chevy Chase highlighted the clash of comedic styles, a reminder that not all partnerships are built to last. Bette Midler revealed the dangers of sharing a spotlight with another star of equal power, a push-pull that gave audiences brilliance, but left scars behind the curtain. Ali MacGraw symbolized the fragility of friendships under the weight of fame, where comparisons and gossip can break bonds more surely than outright betrayal. Alan Ladd Jr. represented the power struggles with a system that wanted to control her destiny and the strength it took to defy it. And Edward Hawn, her father, showed how personal pain can echo across a lifetime, shaping choices far beyond the stage. Together, these conflicts form a pattern. Goldie Hawn's story is one of independence. Again and again, she faced forces, co-stars, executives, even family who threatened to define her. Again and again, she fought back, sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly, but always on her own terms. That's why, at 68, she remains not just a beloved star, but a symbol of resilience. In her later years, Goldie has shifted focus to family, philanthropy, and wellness. Through her Mind Up Foundation, she champions mental health for children, turning her struggles into tools for others. She still occasionally appears on screen, but her legacy is no longer tied to box office numbers. Instead, it's tied to the life she built outside the spotlight, a life shaped as much by the battles she fought as by the laughter she gave the world. The human cost of fame is always high. For Goldie, the price was measured in friendships lost, trust tested, and wounds carried. But the reward? A career that endures, a family that loves her, and a legacy that proves laughter can survive even the deepest rifts. So what do you think? Were Goldie Hawn's 5 biggest riffs exactly who you expected, or did a few of those names surprise you? From co-stars who clashed with her comedy, to executives who doubted her vision, to personal wounds that never truly healed, her story proves that even Hollywood's brightest smiles can hide battles most of us never see. Now it's your turn. Which of these rivalries shocked you the most? Do you think Goldie's resilience is what kept her career alive while others faded? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the untold side of her journey, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share this video with a fellow fan, because the story doesn't end here. The next chapter might just change the way you see Hollywood forever. Keep watching.